All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the amazing DPT to CEO podcast, a very professionally done endeavor. And for those of you who are new here, my name is Morgan. I am a physical therapist and I help other PTs and healthcare providers start their own solo practices so that you never have to go back to the clinic again and can just enjoy your life working for yourself. So here on this podcast, we typically interview other people in our industry who are doing really cool things, and if you are hoping to start your own thing, or continue to build on the practice that you already have, definitely check out the show notes in the description below. There will be links to my website. You can learn a little bit more about the DPT to CEO program, but then we will also have the links for our special guest as well. If you're vibing with him, you can check out his stuff too. So without further ado, welcome special guest Joe.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm super pumped to be here.
Yay, awesome. Yeah, we are really happy to have you here too. We were just talking a little bit about things before we got on to the show, talking a lot about a lot of things. But I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys because I know that there are a lot of other PTs out there who are really interested in the strength and conditioning and lifting and sports realm, and that is everything that Joe is about. So we're really excited to share that stuff with you guys. But Joe, if you don't mind sharing with our listeners a little bit more about you and your story and what led you here.
Sure. My name's Joe. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm 6'3" and I'm 32, and I've been a physical therapist for 8 years now. I went to Duquesne in Pittsburgh, 2016, and I have since bounced around the physical therapy realm in every direction until I have landed where I am now. How I got here, man, I worked for the military right out of school in California, and then I worked for the military in Mississippi. So that's clinic number 1 in Mississippi. And then I worked for a private practice that I got fired at after being hit by my boss for not doing what he wanted me to,
Oh
and
my
filed police
God.
reports against him. So that's clinic number 2. I then got a wound care job at a local hospital. That's PT job 3. And then I did travel physical therapy in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, PT job number 4. I got fired from, apparently being too sarcastic. I don't know.
No, that doesn't sound like you.
Doesn't sound like me. I did some PRN work at an inpatient facility, and then I worked for the military again, and I was a clinical instructor for inpatient and outpatient. So there are jobs 5 and 6, and then I worked for home health, and then I worked for the military again in New Jersey. So that is 7 or 8 physical therapy jobs in the 6 years that I worked in the clinic. And how I got here was in none of those places did I find a culture that supported strength and conditioning the way that I did as a frontline intervention for physical therapy. To kind of bring it all around, what ended up happening was after I got to my 7th physical therapy job, I decided that I was going to start a mentorship with my good friend CJ DePalma at the recommendation of another good friend, Mark Cardula, to fill the gap that is strength and conditioning in the physical therapy space. And so for a while, I created the Clinical Coach Challenge, which was a 6-week strength and conditioning periodization education, like a how-to for physical therapists that took you through 0 to 60 on periodization, athlete management, and all things strength and conditioning in the musculoskeletal world, which fell flat on its face because, as you might know, this physical therapists think that they don't need to do anything different than what they're doing now as far as interventions go, because everything works to get patients better when they just get better given the time and opportunity to do so. And so I don't know if my messaging wasn't good with that or the market just wasn't going to support it, but that ended up not working out. But what did end up working out was that the mentorship group that I hired to help me push forward the strength and conditioning group, their audience was very interested in the fact that I was fully remote, doing only remote athlete management with a company called WOD Prep, which I still work for, which is a CrossFit programming company. And so they were like, tell us about that. And so then I developed the product, which is what I do now, which is the Remote Wellness Fast Track, which is basically teaching physical therapists that own cash practices how to integrate remote strength and conditioning into their business model.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
So we've been a lot of places. I've cried a lot and I've had a lot of failures. Things seem to be working out. The people seem to be enjoying what I'm dishing out. And so I'm here to stay for the foreseeable future.
Nice. So it
Yeah.
sounds like you've really gone through a lot of different like locations and settings, a lot of different places in the country. You were seeking far and wide what it was that you were really looking for. And like ultimately you ended up just making your own thing.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend getting fired. It's very emotional, very emotionally taxing in the moment.
Yeah, I bet.
But it led me to where I'm at now, and there were a couple hiccups in where we got to now. A couple people died, which promoted me to really lean into the remote work so that I could be free of that 9 to 5er, and that has allowed me to spend a lot of time with the folks that I want to spend a lot of time with, to travel the country and the world over the last few years and be with my family for way longer than I would if I was still working in the clinic.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like one of the like most amazing benefits of like doing your own thing. It's like you can design it in a way so that you can live your life. Like I always talk about this with people and I feel like it sounds like so like cliche or like woo woo, but I'm like, you didn't go to school for so long, just to work like forever. Like you have a life to live and like you deserve to enjoy every day, like, with your family and doing stuff that you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like every physical therapist I talk to that has gone out of the regular mill space, as we might call it, asks the same questions, like, am I going to do this for the next 40 years? And it asks it very early on. And then they realize that they're burnt out because they're seeing 18 to 22 patients and doing manual therapy for all of them and handing off exercises to the tech, which is like the most fun thing to do. And then you're like, holy guacamole, is this going to be the remainder of my life? Am I going to end up at 65 and just be like, have arthritis in my hands and nothing to show for it?
Absolutely. And that's something that my husband and I have been talking about quite a bit. I can't remember if I told you, but he's like a PT as well. And he's kind of doing some soul searching right now. But there's just, as a staff clinician, there's just like no upward trajectory, like unless you want to get into management.
Which a lot of clinics will be like, oh, here's this bright eyed and bushy tailed brand new physical therapist. Let's make them the clinic director so that they can fix these problems that they have no idea about. And so I was in almost that position, and I'm glad that I dodged that because I was a bad employee. Obviously, that wouldn't make a good clinic director. But yeah, there's really, the only out is either working for the government, which I would recommend if you don't want to start your own thing. But if you do, then you should, become a DPT and go to a CEO. But if you don't want to do that, working for the government, do that. Suckle off the teat of the government because they have a lot of milk to give.
So like what were your like job positions like? Or I guess like tell us more about that because I don't think we talk
Yeah.
much about that kind of thing like on this show.
Yeah. So my last clinical was at Travis Air Force Base, and that gave me DoD, Department of Defense training, which then opened some doors for me to do what's called contract work. So I was a contract physical therapist for the Air Force and the Army in Mississippi at Keesler Air Force Base, and then in New Jersey at Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, which is a tri-base. But basically, you're contracted by the U.S. government to basically just do physical therapy. And so they have a lot of money to throw at you. They only have one payer source, which is TRICARE, which is nice, right? Socialism is cool when you benefit from it and don't have to pay into it. And so having only one payer source, having a lot of money to be paid to you, having your own office, having federal holidays off, and having like the best gyms that I've ever had in physical therapy clinic because money is not an option. All of those things are very fun when it comes to being a physical therapist because you just don't get that anywhere else. And you can also get onto base and get like $2 lunches.
That's a steal.
Yeah.
We'll just do it for the $2 lunches.
Yes.
Yeah, and like I know back when I was in school, it was something that I was thinking about getting into because my dad was in the military too, so I was kind of thinking along those lines. And do you have, is this correct, more privileges, I guess, as a PT in the military than civilian?
Yes. I don't necessarily agree that that's a good idea for us folks as physical therapists, but you do act as a primary care manager. So you can refer to other physicians, you can see direct access, you can prescribe meds if you have the requisite training. And when I say meds, it's like Tylenol and like mild muscle relaxers, I think is what I
Mhm.
recall. But you do have to like show proof that you know what you're doing. Dry needling, right? You can do a lot of that. Not that I agree with that. And you can order imaging. Not that I think that that's a good idea either. Yes, there are more things that you are able to do, you are held to a higher standard, you are have more responsibilities. But the question of like, are those things necessary to make a good physical therapist? I would probably argue. But yes, you do get more of that. The biggest benefit is that you just see one patient per hour,
Mhm.
and they're all in relatively good shape because they're all in the military.
So kind of, I think, for a lot of us who are probably in like the sports realm, kind of like pretty good patients to work with for the most part, which is cool. But I don't want to take us too much down the side path for the main points that we're talking about today. But thank you for sharing about
Of
like
course.
military PT. But, you worked there and it was pretty good. And we talked about different like interventions and, whether they may or may not actually be necessary. And I know a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings about said interventions. But after you left like traditional settings and got into your own thing, I guess like tell us a little bit more about like your work now as like a remote PT and what that looks like.
So I wouldn't call myself a remote PT, but I teach PTs how to be more remote. The main offer is what's called a remote wellness fast track, and it's an 8-week one-on-one coaching course with myself. And I teach you how to sell and integrate remote or online coaching as a means of getting not only a longer retention out of your patients, but more revenue and better outcomes. And what ends up happening is you talk to me once per week and we kind of break down barriers. I take you through my process of integrating online coaching or remote care into the not only your current plan of care, but for the long term going forward. But I also write your program so that you can get yoked and see what a remotely delivered program not only looks like, but what it can do. And then I've also integrated that clinical coach challenge coursework in there. So it's kind of this like triple arm system where I'm kind of immersing you in all things strength and conditioning as well as remote coaching and how to do that. So the goal basically is to take somebody who has maybe a more performance athlete or performance type caseload who is pretty busy, who is looking to either hire somebody or is just struggling to see all their people at once, and teach them how to move folks who might not necessarily need to see them in person onto a remotely managed program that takes not a lot of time to manage and is of significant benefit to the patient.
And I think that's really cool and like really necessary. And I think like what I was kind of gathering from listening to your podcast a little bit more about like the overall philosophy, which I feel like is something I really agree with. So I guess correct me if I'm wrong, my takeaway. But it sounds like overall, like what you're really hoping to like promote with this to the patient is like overall like health and wellness, like in the long term, health, wellness, and fitness in the long term, and not necessarily about just taking somebody from, like I have like severe shoulder pain to being like not in pain, but taking it like one step further and really delivering them like health, like as a whole. Is that kind of like the thing that we're going for?
Yeah, so everything that I do is through the lens that exercise, physical activity, and strength and conditioning can do everything and more that any other intervention can do, and is going to have the benefits of everything that the physical activity guidelines tell us they do, right? Decrease in morbidity, mortality, increase in bone density, increase in muscle strength, power, decrease in sarcopenia, all these things that we know that exercise does. And knowing the ins and outs of how to deliver that can do what normal interventions or maybe passive modalities or passive interventions can do, while also promising the secondary benefit for long-term health and wellness. And so all of that, everything that I do is through that lens that I can do what you can do from afar and with less time and provide more value.
Yeah, it sounds like
Sometimes
a,
I
a
get sometimes I
win-win.
get a little jazzed up and I forget the question.
I know. I know, and I love it. I think that's awesome. We have like the traditional model of physical therapy in traditional settings, and that's what like a lot of people who are listening to this show, I'm sure like a lot of people who follow you, like they're trying to get away from. Our traditional setting for clinicians is pretty trash most of the time, with the rare exception, obviously. There's that traditional setting, and then kind of like the next step and like what I help a lot of people do is go from, like treating patients at a clinic for another company to just learn how to get the clients yourself. And you can just treat them the way that you want to treat them, whether it's one on one in person, you're doing mobile, you're doing telehealth, you're at a gym, whatever it is, like just use the same one-on-one model and just do it for yourself. And where kind of like it sounds like to me where you're kind of coming in is taking that next step and offering like the patients a way to achieve and maintain health, wellness, and fitness, to feel better, get rid of their pain, all kinds of things like that. But also for the clinician, like learn how to work for yourself in a way where you're not just like trading one job for another, and you have more flexibility. Is that right?
Yes. So there's multiple ways that we can pull on this thread, right? The one that I think is the most related to what you're saying is most cash physical therapists look for the next new patient. And I'm just saying to look towards the people who know, like, and trust you, have paid you thousands of dollars, and you've made a significant impact on their life and offer them something. And so there's all these folks who are like, oh, we can do your Facebook ads, and we can, teach you how to do workshops, and we can do all this stuff for new patients. Well, what about those patients that you're just kicking out the back without any sort of plan, that you're having their symptoms resolved, and then you're dusting off your hands and you're saying, all right, great, go out back into the world. And my gripe is that whenever I look at somebody's cash physical therapy website, it's like, we do phase 1, 2, and 3, and phase 3 is return to sport and return to your stuff, and we take you past baseline, and then they don't have anything that takes anybody past any baseline. And it's so simple. You have these people who are raving fans of your practice, who are paying you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for you to tell them that they're fine and give them exercises and show them the way forward. And then you're not doing anything else. And so what we can do is we can just naturally lead them into that thing that you use to get them significantly better, and say, hey, we can do this continuously for a fraction of the price that you're paying for this other thing. And it just seems like such a simple step down. And it does seem to be implemented as a very simple step down for those folks who can sell exercise.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
other than that, right, if we look at any other scaling avenue, they all have barriers or bottlenecks. It all ends up being a time issue, right? If you want to scale your schedule by yourself, you want to stay a solo owner, a solo PT, then you're just going to run out of hours in the day, and you're going to start doing nights and weekends, which nobody wants to do, because you didn't open a practice to work your life away like you were at a clinic. If you're going to hire somebody else, then you're going to have to deal with the hiring process, and they're going to run into issues, and then you're going to have to start taking patients on again. And if you have in-person wellness, then it's just the same shit. You're just filling time in person with money. And with some of the people I talk to, they're charging less for in-person wellness for the same amount of time, because it's not physical therapy, which is a testament to how little physical therapists value strength and conditioning, and how much more they value whatever the hell else they're doing in physical therapy.
Yeah, which I think is really interesting. And I mean, like, I'm definitely on the team of at minimum, just charge the same. Like you're still helping them and you're still offering value. And besides the fact that it's way simpler, like to keep things the same. But yeah, I mean, like I love that. And I think this is such a great option, because I know for me, like in my experience, like treating in person, like most of the time when people are ready like to be quote unquote discharged, about half the time they want to stick around. Like they like having the option to continue to talk to a professional about their health and wellness and continue to get better, or like a lot of times like I'll help people through injury, but then it's like, okay, I want to get better at barbell stuff. Like I just really want to work on my barbell technique, and like that's something that is like a continuity thing where we're not really ever going to be done. So, like, as long as the patients want to be there and they like continuing to work on this stuff with somebody, I think it's in your best interest as a practice owner and as a PT to have something to offer them.
Yeah, not only that, but they have self-selected themselves to not only have the means to afford it, but to want to invest in their health, right? Again, if they're paying, I have clients who charge the mid 400s per session. If they're self-selecting themselves to avoid a $50 copay to come see you, then obviously they're going to have the money to throw at health and wellness for the foreseeable future. And if you're wondering about how long you can really string that along, then all you have to do is look at something like the physical activity guidelines for Americans that says that every human on the planet should be doing 2 or more days of moderately intense muscle strengthening activity, all major muscle groups, and 75 to 150 minutes of moderate intensity vigorous cardiovascular activity per week for the remainder of their lives until they're dead. And so you have these people that like you, they have the money, they have the need. Only I think 18% of the American population is hitting the minimum of those recommendations. So by the rule of numbers that they're going to need it and they're unlikely to be doing what they need to be doing to stay healthy. And you as a healthcare provider, it is within your scope of practice per the APTA, and it is within your duty to give them what they need to be very healthy, which is simple strength and conditioning.
Absolutely. I love this. I love listening to like all the things that you have to say about this because I'm just
Good, I'm glad.
finally and another person like who gets it I love just being on the same wavelength.
Confirmation bias, man. Come on. What's better?
Just all the listeners out there, me and Joe are right. So you
Yes.
guys can listen.
How's it feel to be wrong? No, I'm just kidding.
But I wanted to ask you, and like see how you I guess like your thoughts on this stuff for like our practice owners that are out there, say like cash practice owners who are very like manual based or like modality based, I are they typically like do you work with a lot of people who do that or are you typically working with people who are already like kind of exercise based?
Listen, I know we got to keep the lights on. I know that there is utility sometimes to use things like passive modalities and interventions. We can have an entire conversation, and I've talked at length about what is the efficacy of what is happening, what's the mechanism of why people are getting better. We don't have the time to talk about that. Talk till I'm purple in the face about that. But I recognize that needs to happen sometimes.
Hmm.
But what I have found is that if people lead or are very heavy in the manual world, they just don't have the conviction to sell exercise at the value that it needs to be sold at, right? Which
Hmm.
is multiple hundreds of dollars per month. And if that makes you cringe hearing that I charge $400 a month for simple strength and conditioning programming, then what we're doing here probably isn't going to land in your practice because you're just not going to be able to get behind it to the point where you're going to be able to look at somebody and say, I know that we've just done 8 sessions of dry needling. And now we have this other thing that we haven't done any of that I don't really believe in, but I want you to do that for the remainder of your life with me. So, yes, you can do it. And my question to folks who do that is surely you see and know as a physical therapist and a doctor of your field that there is utility in exercise. Why not be able to fit that into your practice? But in my experience, if folks are not already leaning into strength and conditioning as either a primary or a secondary intervention in their patient care, then it's a tough sell for them because if it was a priority and they had the conviction to do it, then they would be doing it already in some
Hmm.
form, whether that's a squat rack in their practice or they're a doc in a box or they're a hashtag gym PT, whatever. Like there would be something happening already. And if you don't believe in it, that's cool.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the saying? Different strokes for different folks?
You are open to your beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Different
Yeah.
strokes for different folks. Whatever
Yeah.
tickles your fancy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's you're saying, like if you are somebody who maybe is like more like manual modality, like hands-on as a therapist right now, if you are still like utilizing exercise or like at the bare minimum like open to like adding it into what you're doing, then like this absolutely can be something to implement. And I think what I was listening to, again, I'm just going to keep referencing your podcast.
Sure.
The link will be down below. One thing that you were saying in one of the episodes I was listening to today, which is something that like I always really like to teach other people to do. So I'd love to get your take on it. But like the power of like pre-framing, because I guess like one question that I was going to ask you, is like, how do you start to implement this like into your practice and like how do you start to sell this to people? And what I just love to do is like I refer to it as pre-framing, where like at the very beginning like of your relationship with a patient, you can talk with them through like the process that you're going to take them through. Like I have this like pyramid diagram that I talk people through and say, like, okay, phase one is going to be kind of like this traditional physical therapy situation. And here's what that looks like and the steps we're going to go through. And then at the end of that, we'll, reconvene, reassess, and we can talk about what phase two looks like, which might look like some kind of like month to month continuity, strength, and conditioning thing. And by doing that whole like pre framing conversation at the beginning with patients, you're just already setting yourself up for success, like in the long run. So, going back to the question, Joe, of how do you start to implement this and sell this kind of a thing to patients? Tell us more about it.
I call it expectation touch points. I recommend that the folks start as early as possible, right? Make a call to your referral sources, let them know that there's something cool that you're now doing for your patients so that those referral sources can deliver that to patients as they're referring them to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
There should be some narrative on your website. There should be an inclusion in those phases that I see everybody have on their websites. Phase 3 is remote wellness that's delivered right to your pocket, that you're going to be doing this XYZ training without having to, schlep to the clinic. There should be some sort of roadmap that you're showing them on the day of the evaluation or in their pre-framing email that says, hey, this is where you're going to end up. And
Mm-hmm.
my biggest recommendation is to just start sooner. I recommend that all my clients have their patients get their HEPs delivered remotely through one of the periodization apps, right? We use TrueCoach in our remote wellness fast track. Deliver the HEP through TrueCoach so that they become accustomed to receiving a remotely delivered program from you. They get to know the service because confusion doesn't buy. And at the end of that time of physical therapy, if they're uncertain about what it is that you're offering, then they're not gonna be interested in it. So remove the veil of uncertainty from them from the very beginning by loading them into what it is that you're offering to them early on. Maybe don't give them like a full program early on. Like we have different steps, like as a stepwise program that involve more or less time from you, or have them doing more or less skill-based work as they progress through physical therapy. But the best thing that you can do is just remove that veil of uncertainty and, yes, manage their expectations from the very beginning. Hey, after we get you to XYZ checkpoint, we're going to move you to this totally remote thing for at least 3 months so that we can get you training.
Yeah, like most likely, like, at least on eval, the patient's going to be like, cool, sounds good. You're the professional. I'll do whatever you say.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, the outward facing content is going to be a good place to do that too. Whether there's, if you go to anybody's physical therapy, like Cash Physical Therapy website, they're going to outline the phases. They're going to have a mission statement. They're going to have a we help statement. They're going to have photos of, them. They're going to have a blog about what they're about. There's no reason that you can't include that we offer this sort of thing at the end of care, and just having things naturally progress into where it is that you want them to be, right? Rather than getting to the point where the patient's all the way better and they're like, oh, great, I feel great. And then you're
Yeah.
like, by the way, we have this cool thing you can also pay for that you might benefit from. And they're like, I'm good. I've gotten to my goal. I know that I'm all the way better. And to continue to pull on a thread that I should have put on earlier, my friend Chris Beavers, who is doing a lot of front desk work, taught me going 3 layers deep with the problem, finding the why. If you read like Donald Miller, he is building a story brand. He talks
Yes.
about an external and internal and philosophical problem, right? So external problem might be my back hurts. The internal problem might be my back hurts, so I can't be as active as I might want to be, and I'm going to be unhealthy in the long term for that. And the philosophical problem might be because my back hurts, I can't be the dad to my children that I want to be. And so finding that why at the very beginning, connecting that to the remote wellness program as the vehicle to get you there to the long term is a great way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it becomes much more about like offering and selling the transformation for a person rather than selling physical therapy like as like a service or product, like single individual thing. And like that's something that I want to try to figure out, how to keep like communicating that clearly to everybody who's starting a practice and doing their own thing, is like we're not in the business of just selling like physical therapy sessions. That's not what we're here to offer. We're here to offer like a big old transformation to help somebody like go from this place where they are in pain, or they feel like they're struggling with something, to empowering them to learn how to take care of it on their own, and then how to maintain it and continue to become more well and more fit in the long run so that they can actually enjoy their life, and
Yeah.
be with their family, be with their kids, like all these things. And it's never, ever, ever just selling the physical therapy or selling, a program on True Coach. It's much more than that.
Right. You're selling the vacation. Nobody wants to hear about TSA. They want to hear about the beach.
Yeah, yeah,
You're not selling a
exactly.
drill, you're selling a hole in a wall, right? That sort of thing.
Yes. We're selling the results.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, and I know, like, one little thing I just wanted to make sure that we touched on a little bit more, because we're obviously very pro strength and conditioning here in this chat. Tell me a little bit more about, like, your experience, maybe, like, talking with other PTs who feel like this stuff isn't skilled.
Yeah. So it's always a question of, is it skilled or not? Right. And that's kind of where a lot of billing lies and a lot of scope of practice lies and a lot of insurance lies. And the idea that strength and conditioning isn't skilled,
It's a hard question, I feel
yes,
like.
my question is always like, well, how can we say that something like manual therapy that is so broad and vague is skilled just because we're the only ones who are allowed to do it, right? I might be able to get
Mhm.
behind dry needling as being skilled because you don't want to give somebody a pneumothorax, but
Yes.
the idea that because you're not putting your hands on somebody that it doesn't count as skilled therapy, which means that there's just no skill or complexity in like being able to deliver strength and conditioning is a weird thought. As we get into different types of periodization and considering the variables and the complexities of creating a program based on not only what somebody needs as far as strength and conditioning based on their goals, but also what aches and pains that they have available and how to bend a program and the periodized variables around that, it does become skilled and complex in a different way that just isn't involved as far as the hands-on. Like in the classic sense, physical therapists define skilled as something that I can only do and something that nobody else can do because of my education. And I think that physical therapists are uniquely positioned to use periodization and programming and athlete management as a skilled practitioner in the musculoskeletal sense. A lot of physical therapists feel that we're here to tell people what to do. There's so many things to do that will quote unquote work for symptom modification in the physical therapy space that we need to be able to understand the mechanisms and the, I want to say, logistics of the body
Mhm.
to understand what is or isn't a good idea to do. And so I
Mhm.
feel like there's skill in that. And when it comes to periodization and writing a program for somebody, there's certainly skill in juxtaposing all of the variables that come with writing a periodized program into all the variables of some sort of musculoskeletal presentation. But it's tough, right? Because people just get better. And 3 by 10 gets people just as better as whatever I'm writing because of things like regression to the mean, right? And natural history and the way that things just get better if we leave them alone. If they're some sort of acute presentation, it's just going to get better on its own. And it's tough. It's tough to sell that you need to know more than what you're doing to get people not a lot better symptomatically. Does that make sense? Like if
Mhm.
your patients are getting better because you're a good salesman or you have conviction behind whatever it is that you're selling, and they get better because you're charming and good looking and are in shape and just so happen to be able to speak well, it's hard to say, what you should do is you should learn this complicated language that will not get your patients any better. Get them yoked, right? But it won't get them any better, which is what most physical therapists care about in the sense of like some sort of LEFS or outcomes or whatever you're using, oswestry. It's been so long I can't even remember. But it's a tough sell to be like, this is what you should be doing. And I think that that's why things didn't work out with Coach Challenge, because people are like, my patients get better just fine. I've seen it
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to a certain extent, it's like, well, why change something that's not broken?
Right. And so to almost go back on the other point where it's like the manual therapy heavy folks, it's a tough sell, right? They're like, my manipulations do just fine. And that's what they're coming to me for, is to feel better. And they're an adult and they can do whatever they want after I do my job. But we can do so much more and they'll pay more and you'll have to get less patients for that.
Yeah. And I feel like overall too, there's just like something to impart to our listeners today is, if you feel like you've been in a box and like pigeonholed to do physical therapy or like offer your services in a certain way, there's so much more that you have to offer, and like don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, I made a post the other day and somebody commented that it's, physical therapists should know the strength and conditioning language, but should refer out to strength coaches. And I say, for what? Elite level athletes, sure. Right. If somebody is on a sports team or gets paid to do whatever they're doing, sure, they can go to a strength coach and do those particular things. But my argument, and no offense to strength coaches or personal trainers, but you just don't have the musculoskeletal understanding that we have to continue the road that this person was going down when they came to you in the first place. You're more than capable as a highly educated 1% of the population of, graduate school people, that you can learn this language and apply it good enough to make significant changes to somebody's health for the long time.
Absolutely. You know some stuff.
Yeah.
You can help people out. There's so much more that we can do. Well, I appreciate you, like taking the time to kind of walk us through that. I think it's really good stuff for a lot of people to hear, because like especially as you're getting into like working for yourself, I mean your confidence is going to be shaken several times. Things
Lots
are
of
going to
crying.
go, yeah, it's going to go up and down and you're going to question a lot of things, but you have to know like at your core that like you are somebody who can help create significant changes in a person's life and it's valuable. And there's a lot that we can do. And so I guess like switching gears a little bit with this stuff, and kind of going off of the experience of starting your own business, Joe. We were talking a little bit before about, you went through a bunch of different settings and then you tested the waters in several ways as a business owner. I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit more, and maybe like share your experience of kind of going through different iterations of things and like what you've learned as a business owner in the process.
Oh man, what I've learned is to wildly expand your time horizon of when things will work, is what I understand, right? It's always like this month it's gonna pop off, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like 3 years in. Expand your expectations of the time horizon, and they're just not gonna like it. The people aren't gonna like it, and you're gonna have to be all right with that. And if you can't be all right with that and you hold on for something for too long and the people aren't voting for it, then something is going to give. It's either going to be you and your confidence in what you're doing, which is going to catapult everything that you're doing into the ground, or you're just going to run out of steam. And so being able to put stuff out there and listen to what the people are saying is good, right? I never really got behind the idea of like blocking the haters. Like, sure, there are going to be haters, but maybe they have something to say that is going to make a change in whatever it is that you're doing, right? Maybe like, this is
Mhm.
dumb. Why are you doing this? And you're like, this is kind of dumb, right? Maybe I should be changing this. Maybe I should be doing something different. Because that's kind of exactly what happened when my other thing wasn't working. I pitched it to my coach and he was like, that's a way better idea. We should do that. I was like, okay. Right. And if I was like, this idiot, he doesn't know what I know. He doesn't know how good my thing is. Right.
Yeah.
I'd still be there and it still wouldn't be working. And so it's kind of like applying physical therapy interventions, right? There's multiple factors that are coming into play to change the subjective milieu, and you're not going to be able to isolate everything all at once. And that's tough, right? To be like, I don't know why it's not going right, but it's not going right. And being okay with maybe not knowing why it's not going right and just being okay with that uncertainty, just like you are in physical therapy, needs to just happen, right?
Mhm.
Because it could be the marketing, it could be the message, it could be the delivery, it could be the niche, it could be your product, your offer isn't good enough. And so it's tough. It's tough all around. It's that's my advice, is it's tough and you just have to eat shit. You might come out swinging and you might have a fantastic offer and it might be exactly what people are looking for. And you might have the wherewithal to only do one thing and not everything all at once. And you might be influenced by mentors to just stick to one thing for a few years and then make a change. But if you don't, then you're just going to eat shit for a long time. And it wasn't until that I got really far into entrepreneurship where I just started to look towards people who had been there and ask them, is this the thing? And they're like, no, do this thing. Or no, you should phrase it like this. Or
Mhm.
don't waste your time doing that. Just do this. Will, he was like, dude, screw all that. Just do this.
I
I
love
was
that
like,
guy.
I was like,
Shout out to Will Boyd.
I was like, oh, okay. And it's such a relief you're doing one thing,
Mhm. It
but
really is.
it
Oh
took
my gosh.
years.
Oh,
But
oh my gosh.
but the eating shit expands your palate,
Yeah.
right? You know a bunch of shit now because you ate a lot of shit, and that
Yeah.
shit helps.
This podcast episode is just gonna be called like the benefits of eating shit with Joe.
There you go. There you go.
No, but like really though, and like I really wanted to talk to you about it because like I feel like my whole start to things was exactly the same way where like when I first started my practice there was just like a zillion other things that I wanted to do, because like I have a lot of passion and I have a lot of interest and I have a lot of different ways that I want to help people. And it's like, okay, well, you can go that route, but it's going to be like 1,000 times harder and it's going to take longer.
These are all
Um,
different ways to do great things. And I would love to
yeah,
do all of them at once,
I know. I know.
but you
So
can't.
if that's you listening, if you feel that way, you're definitely in the right place. It's going to take longer to do things that way. And like some days I regret that I started in such a scattered way. But then at the same time, it's like there's also like there's a benefit to the struggle and having to go through that stuff to really like figure out what it is that you want to do and like the best way to communicate your offer, best way to do your services, and the best way to market your services. So like on paper, choosing one thing and going all in on that one thing is like the fastest way to get where you want to go, but going the harder route is also going to help you, I think, like develop a lot as a person. So like if you're going that way, and I mean either way really, like just something to add on to that is kind of like what you were talking about a little bit, Joe, is just like you're going to mess up a lot and you're going to fail a lot and you're going to be like because I've done this before, you're going to be like, this is the idea, they're gonna love this. Like, I'm
They're
gonna
gonna
make
love it.
millions and
Wait
it's
till they
gonna
hear
be
about it.
great. Yeah. And then, 3 or 4 people sign up and that's it. And
Then you
then
write
it's
a
like, well,
15 email launch and one person signs up. Yeah, I
yes,
got you.
but it's like it's just kind of part of the game, to try things and fail, and you learn so much from it. And so like I know that there are a lot of people out there who are like very afraid of like the failing aspect of it, but I honestly don't think that there's a way that you can fail doing this. Like you're either going to go where you want to go or you're going to learn something from the experience.
Yeah. And lately, I've had death on my mind a lot, right? And it's coming for all of us. And you have to be happy right now. There's this huge pull in the entrepreneurial world to be striving towards the thing that's going to do it. And you just can't. You have to look around and be pumped about what's going on now. You don't have to be like super jazzed about it, but you have to be like, this is okay where I'm at. And I just need to accept that things are going to move how they move. And you can't, there's no award at the end to be like $20 billion. Congrats.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing. There's just, you missed out on everything because you're too focused on doing this one thing. And now it's over and there's nothing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. That's everybody just let that sink in.
Have fun. You don't have to do it today. You could do a little bit today. And if you're proud of what you did today, that's enough because it's going to get there when it's going to get there.
Yeah. I need a t-shirt. I need a t-shirt with your face on it doing that smile and then that quote. And that'll be good.
Yeah. Everybody's having a hard time. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many good quotes today, Joe. But yeah, like it really is like it's so important to remember that stuff because when you are really passionate and you're driven and ambitious and you want to make things like you want to have certain results, you are going to work really hard, but like you have to remember like why and like know that it's okay to like take some time off as well.
It's so easy to get swept up in the alpha grind set, right? Where you're like, holy shit, Alex Hormozy has made $40 billion already. And he's 32 and he's got a six pack, right? Get off social media. Go hang out with your family. Go touch grass outside. Lift some weights. Everything's going to be great.
Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like if you're in a place where like you're trying and you're just doing like a little bit every day, whether it's like a little bit working on your business or a little bit enjoying life, like it's fine.
Yeah. And that's like I have in the remote wellness fast track, I have a module where it's like, you're going to die and you need to like confront it right now because what we're trying to do is build time into your life so that you can go do stuff and still be okay financially. Your patients will still be okay. Your business will still be okay. Right. If we can leverage time and manage 10 of your patients over a 2-hour period and make, what you would in 2 days of seeing patients, guess what? You can do whatever you want for those 2 days and be okay. Or you can fill it with more patients
It's an option.
And be buried with all your money that they're going to pile on top of you in your grave,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or you can, go outside.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of sage advice shared here today, Joe.
Thank you. I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah, me too. Starting off with I think the best one, or one of the best ones, was just, it's not fun getting fired.
It is not fun getting fired.
But hey, if you're working for yourself, you're probably not going to fire yourself, at least not right away.
Yeah.
So it'll be fine. Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for all of the things today, Joe. I know this is really going to help a lot of people, who are out here either like looking into starting their own thing, or like wanting to figure out a way to get out from, the massive caseload that they do have. So, everybody who's listening, definitely check out Joe's stuff. Follow him on Instagram, check out his website and everything. But maybe to just kind of wrap things up here, Joe, can you just share one more time a little bit about the way that you work with people and the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yes, the best way to reach out to me is through my website, and I am on Instagram. Will's making me go on Instagram a lot, so
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram. I'm there. It's just me. There's no Filipino setters there. It's just me. The best way to work with me is through my website or Instagram, and it's one-on-one with me. It's an entrance into my brain of athlete management, of how to retain athletes for a very long time, how to write periodization, how to deliver a succinct and complete program, and how to integrate all of that into your cash practice right now so that we can start getting time back while not sacrificing revenue.
Love it. Awesome. Well, cool. Well, thank you guys, everybody, for listening. If you're ready to make some changes, hit me up, hit Joe up. I'll definitely help you out. You can see Joe specifically appears to work remotely. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. So
Yes.
if you're interested in that,
I
definitely
have no
check out
shoes
his
on.
stuff. Me either.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, you guys.
This is the Piggies Are Out podcast.
That's going to be the spinoff. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, for checking out the episode. And all the links are below, and we will see you on the next one.